That night in Macau, nobody knew a casino fight would force one of Hong Kong's brightest stars to flee his homeland forever. The year was 1982, and Jackie Chan had already tasted fame. His acrobatic kung fu films were breaking box office records across Asia. Audiences loved his fearless stunts, his infectious smile, his willingness to break every bone in his body for the perfect shot. But success in Hong Kong's entertainment world came with invisible strings attached. Strings that connected directly to the city's most dangerous underground networks. The casino floors of Macau glittered with promise and peril. Wealthy businessmen, film producers, and triad members mingled freely in those dimly lit halls, where fortunes changed hands faster than cards could be dealt. Jackie had been invited by people he thought were friends, people connected to the film industry who could open doors. What he didn't realize was that some doors, once opened, could never be closed again. The argument started small, a misunderstanding over money, perhaps a debt someone claimed he owed. Voices rose above the clinking of chips and the soft jazz playing in the background. Then came the shove, the instinctive reaction, the martial arts training that made Jackie's hands move before his mind could stop them. But this wasn't a movie set where stunts were choreographed and falls were carefully planned. The man Jackie struck had powerful connections, the kind that stretched deep into Hong Kong's criminal underworld. Within hours, word spread through the narrow streets of Kowloon and across the harbor to Hong Kong Island. A bounty had been placed on Jackie Chan's head, 500,000 Hong Kong dollars. In 1982, that sum could buy a luxury apartment or destroy a life. Jackie's friends in the industry began calling, their voices tight with fear. "You need to leave," they whispered into phones, glancing over their shoulders. "Tonight. Maybe tomorrow will be too late." Some of these friends had seen what happened to others who'd crossed the wrong people. Bodies found floating in Victoria Harbor, careers ending in mysterious accidents, families threatened until debts were paid in blood or silence. The young star sat in his apartment that night, staring at the Hong Kong skyline through his window. The city's lights had always represented his dreams: fame, respect, the chance to make his mother proud. She had worked so hard as a housekeeper at the French embassy, raising him alone after his father left to work in Australia. Every dangerous stunt, every painful injury, every sleepless night had been worth it to see her smile when his film succeeded. Now those same lights seemed to mock him. Hollywood had been courting Jackie for years, but he'd always resisted. The Americans didn't understand his style, he thought. They wanted to turn him into another Bruce Lee, another stoic martial artist who glowered at cameras and spoke in fortune cookies. Jackie was different. He blended comedy with action, made audiences laugh while their hearts raced with excitement. Would Hollywood allow him to be himself? But that question had become irrelevant. The choice was no longer between Hong Kong and Hollywood, it was between life and death. His manager arrived before dawn, carrying a single suitcase. "I've arranged everything," he said quietly. "You leave in 3 hours. Don't pack much. Don't tell anyone where you're going." Jackie looked around his apartment, at the awards on the shelf, the photographs with his stunt team, the script for his next film that would now never be made. The flight to Los Angeles felt endless. Jackie pressed his face against the window as Hong Kong disappeared beneath the clouds, wondering if he would ever see his home again. His mother knew he was leaving, but not why. "Work opportunity," he told her, hugging her longer than usual. She'd looked into his eyes. Mothers always know when their children are lying, but she didn't ask questions. Perhaps she understood that some truths were too dangerous to speak aloud. America welcomed Jackie Chan with indifference. In Los Angeles, nobody recognized him. He was just another Asian actor trying to break into Hollywood, a city that had chewed up and spit out countless martial artists before him. The studios offered him roles as villains, henchmen, nameless gang members who died in the first act. They wanted kung fu, but not comedy. They wanted action, but not his personality. Depression settled over him like fog. In Hong Kong, he had been a king. In Hollywood, he was invisible. The language barrier made everything harder. He'd rehearsed English phrases for years, but American slang confused him, and his accent made casting directors shake their heads. Too ethnic, they said politely. Not marketable. But Jackie had learned something crucial during his years in Hong Kong's brutal film industry: how to take a hit and keep moving forward. He began accepting any work he could find, even small roles that paid barely enough to cover his modest apartment rent. He trained harder than ever in local gyms, perfecting stunts that made American stuntmen gasp. Slowly, very slowly, word began spreading about the crazy Hong Kong guy who did his own stunts, who never used safety equipment, who would throw himself down staircases and through windows without hesitation. The years crawled by. 1983 became 1984, became 1985. Jackie made films that flopped in America but succeeded in Asia, where his old fans still remembered him. The bounty back in Hong Kong remained active. Friends whispered that the triads never forgot, never forgave. But distance and time had created a strange safety. As long as he stayed in America, he was untouchable. The loneliness was crushing. In Hong Kong, he'd been surrounded by his stunt team, brothers who'd trained with him since childhood, who knew every move before he made it, who trusted him with their lives. In Hollywood, stunt coordinators treated him like a liability. "Too dangerous," they'd say when he proposed a sequence. "Insurance won't cover it." They didn't understand that danger was his language, that risk was how he communicated with audiences. Late at night, in his small Los Angeles apartment, Jackie would practice sequences alone, his body moving through choreography no one wanted to film. The walls were thin enough that neighbors complained about the noise, the sound of his feet hitting the floor, the furniture being moved for better angles, the occasional crash when he miscalculated a landing. He didn't care. If he stopped moving, stopped training, stopped pushing himself, then the people who'd forced him from his home would have truly won. His mother's letters arrived every few weeks, written in Chinese characters that reminded him of everything he'd left behind. She never mentioned the bounty. Perhaps she didn't know the full story, or perhaps she knew too well and understood that some truths were better left unspoken. Instead, she wrote about small things: the neighbor's cat that had kittens, the price of vegetables at the market, how proud she was when she saw his films playing in Hong Kong theaters, even though he couldn't return to promote them. Jackie kept every letter in a box under his bed. On particularly difficult days, when casting directors had rejected him, or when the money was running dangerously low, he would read them again, tracing his mother's handwriting with his finger. Her faith in him was absolute, unshakable. He couldn't disappoint her by giving up, no matter how tempting it became. Then came The Big Brawl and The Cannonball Run, films that introduced him to American audiences without truly understanding what made him special. Directors tried to mold him into their vision instead of letting his unique style shine through. But Jackie was patient. He'd learned patience during those long nights in Hong Kong's opera school, where children were beaten until they could perform impossible acrobatic feats. This was just another form of training. Between American productions, he would fly back to Asia, to Taiwan, to Japan, anywhere but Hong Kong, to make films his way. These movies kept him financially afloat and creatively alive. In them, he could be himself, funny, physical, willing to look foolish for a laugh before stunning audiences with impossible stunts. Asian audiences still loved him. They hadn't forgotten. They were waiting for the world to catch up. The turning point came in unexpected ways. Small moments accumulated like drops of water wearing down stone. An American stunt coordinator who'd worked with him on a failed project started telling stories about the crazy Hong Kong guy to other industry professionals. A video rental clerk in San Francisco began recommending Jackie's Hong Kong films to customers, creating an underground cult following. Film students at UCLA discovered his work and wrote papers analyzing his unique blend of Buster Keaton-style physical comedy with martial arts choreography. Word spread slowly through Hollywood's underground networks. The assistants and second-unit directors and stunt performers who actually made films happen while producers took credit. They talked about Jackie's work ethic, his refusal to use stunt doubles, his willingness to attempt any sequence, no matter how dangerous. In an industry built on illusion, Jackie's commitment to doing everything real made him something rare, authentic. The breakthrough came slowly, then all at once. By the early 1990s, Hollywood had begun changing. Audiences were hungry for something different, something fresh. Jackie's blend of comedy and action, the very thing studios had rejected, suddenly became his greatest asset. Films like Rumble in the Bronx finally showed American audiences what Asian fans had known for decades. Jackie Chan wasn't just a martial artist. He was a complete entertainer. The bounty that had chased him from Hong Kong had inadvertently pushed him toward global superstardom. If he'd stayed in Hong Kong's film industry, he might have remained a local legend but never achieved international fame. The danger that had seemed like a career-ending disaster had actually been a strange, terrible blessing. Years later, when Jackie finally returned to Hong Kong for a visit, protected now by fame, wealth, and international status, he stood on Victoria Peak, looking down at the glittering city. The person who'd placed the bounty was long gone, either dead or imprisoned or simply forgotten by a new generation. The old casino where the fight had started had been demolished and rebuilt as something else. But Jackie understood something profound that night. Sometimes, the worst moments in our lives push us toward destinies we never imagined. The violence that had driven him away had also driven him forward. The fear that had chased him across an ocean had actually been chasing him toward greatness. He thought about all the broken bones, the dangerous stunts, the years of struggle in America when he'd been tempted to give up and return home despite the danger. He thought about his mother, who'd lived long enough to see him become an international superstar, her face glowing with pride at premieres in cities around the world. The city below twinkled with possibility, just as it had that night in 1982. But now Jackie saw those lights differently. They weren't mocking him anymore. They were welcoming him home, not as a fugitive, but as a conqueror who'd turned exile into triumph. Some nights, when he can't sleep, Jackie still remembers that casino floor, that moment when his hand moved faster than his judgment. He wonders what would have happened if he'd walked away, if he'd swallowed his pride, if he'd let the insult pass without response. But then he remembers all the lives he's touched with his films, all the children who learned that heroes could be funny and vulnerable, all the barriers he'd broken by simply being himself on screen. And he realizes that sometimes our biggest mistakes lead us to our greatest achievements. The bounty is long forgotten now, a footnote in an extraordinary life. But its impact echoes through every film Jackie has made, every stunt he's survived, every smile he's brought to audiences worldwide. That night in Macau didn't destroy his career, it launched it into the stratosphere in ways nobody, least of all Jackie himself, could have ever predicted.